Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and today I'm one third of what promises to be a fascinating show. Remember folks, the Echo Chamber podcast is a free-flowing conversation that might occasionally touch on mature subjects. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Martin McMahon. Hi Martin.
How you doing, Tony?
More importantly, I'm delighted to be joined in the podcast by a fellow tortoise enthusiast, writer, activist and spokesperson for Spark, Single Parents Acting for the Rights of Our Kids, Hazel Larkin. Hazel, you're very welcome to the Tortoise Shack.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
Martin, we were kind of talking. What do you do? And I said, well, actually, you know.
Well, Tony looked at Hazel's CV, and Tony is an intellectual snob. He's awful. He's awful. But anyway, Hazel's CV was so good. I mean, she's an IQ up there in the 190s. Like you and I, Hazel, we can talk on a level, but we have to bring Tony into the conversation every now and again.
I'm told that with Hazel's IQ of 190, the combined IQ in the room is now 194.
And the tortoise has two.
Yeah.
I think you must have read somebody else's CV.
No, not at all. We won't have any modesty in here. We were genuinely thrilled that you came in to join us.
And
Martin, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, well, I was this thing on Channel 4 where they asked people to draw the border. I thought that was brilliant because I don't really expect the British to know where the Irish border is. I mean, they couldn't tell you where Scotland or Wales is.
True.
But then I was thinking in Ireland, there's a whole lot of people. Like we had Fintan on the week before last, and Fintan was saying like Donegal is the forgotten county, that lots of people in the south couldn't tell you where Donegal is, or they think Donegal is part of the north. But, you know, I was thinking, would I be able to draw a map of Meath? And the answer is no. I know sort of Ashbourne, a few miles up, and then you're really in the sticks after that, so I have no idea where, except that it's a big county. I know it's a big county, but Tony was saying that we should actually build a wall around the M50.
Why?
Well, if we're gonna go that far, we might as well say, well, look, you know, the rest of the country would actually prefer to just leave all the Dubliners in, and we'd probably go, yeah, that's happy enough, because everywhere beyond the M50 was actually the same.
Well, that's getting back to redrawing the Pale then, isn't it? I was having this conversation but the Pale extended out as far as Clane, didn't it? Because I know that I grew up in Selbridge, so it was like, it's okay, we're within the Pale.
Yeah.
We're washed, we're clean, we're grand.
Well, you wash once a week, whether you need it or not.
Whether we need it or not, this is true.
No, I thought when I saw the actual Channel 4 thing, you saw the follow-up then, where they went to Drogheda yesterday. Actually, they went in, and of course, what did they do? Rather than repair the damage of having the people in the UK draw a line across the middle of Ireland. They went into Drogheda into a pub where they were playing a bit of diddly eye music and had fellas who were down in pints say, you know, can you draw the maps of the lines in the UK and things like this, and what do you think of the border? And she wasn't at all sure. Begorra, gosh, we're all grand, it'll be great crack. And it went, oh God, every single stereotype was actually played out.
Yeah, but that's a walled city though, to bring it back, you know, so maybe there's something going on there about walling cities in, and you know.
Well, I agree, Drogheda should be walled in. I mean, Drogheda's a close neighbour of mine, and the odd day we'll get the visa out and we'll head up there to do a bit of shopping, but nobody can understand a bloody word they say up there.
Well, that's part of their strategy. It's
I think so. It's like half Northern, half Dublin.
Yeah,
and it's just this unique mix of accents. And sorry, Mum and Dad, because that's their closest town. Sorry, Mum and Dad, but like, who goes to Drogheda?
Well, you pass through it, don't you? If you're
Not
avoiding
anymore.
the toll.
No, you can go around.
No, to avoid the toll. Because I used to go up and down to Belfast very frequently. I studied there for a year, and rather than move, I commuted, which is fine. And you know, it was to avoid the toll. You would go through Drogheda and then kind of go, actually, I'd rather pay the toll.
I have nothing to say in defence of Drogheda, nothing whatsoever. No, I think just if we can really talk about some of the things that actually went outside of the news cycle, given the ridiculous focus on what were the pantomime politics that we had, and that it took Leo 4 days to admit that Francis Fitzgerald just had to resign. It was really
well. If we take the Dublin rural divide, a figure that came out this week that sort of went under the radar was that homelessness among single adults in the Midlands is up 44% since October 2016. 44%. So the homeless problem is not just Dublin.
Oh no.
It's all over the country, and we had 2 men died this week, and back in September, 3 people died in a very short space of time, and the Taoiseach said absolutely nothing about it. There was no, and when he did speak, it was to give a sort of a resume of one of the men who died, and once he gave this resume of the man that had died, oh look, he wasn't really worthy.
That's exactly.
And
yes.
this has come out yet again, and Leo came out, and there's a quote here from Ger McCann at Ger McCann. The fact that Varadkar even mentioned the homeless person who died was Lithuanian and drug dependent tells you everything you need to know about Fine Gael's attitude to the homeless crisis.
You see, this nonsense of saying somebody is drug dependent, I'm sorry, but if I was on the streets for more than 3 days, I would be looking for heroin or something to make it less horrible, because it is flipping horrible being on the streets. Even if it's not cold, you're so vulnerable. You're so vulnerable to the elements, but to other people. I mean, the amount of stories that we've heard about the belongings of homeless people, of rough sleepers being set on fire, of people being urinated on, of things being thrown at people, of food being thrown at people, of the money that they've accumulated throughout the day being stolen from them. You know, it's not a lifestyle choice, let's put it that way. And coming back to your point, Martin, about homelessness being something that exists outside of Dublin, they're now talking about closing down the one and only homeless shelter in Athlone.
Yes.
Closing it down.
Huh?
So where do homeless people go?
Well, Renua and our dear hard right, anti-anything that's anyway reasonable party.
The militant wing of Fine Gael.
Continuity, Fine Gael.
Yeah.
Well, Renua came out and they said, after this man had died, and they linked an article to one of the newspapers, and they said, time for action, Owen Murphy. We have to ensure a hostel place for everyone, and poor lifestyle choices are challenged, particularly in winter. Now, this is back to this old Victorian, the poor are always with us, it's your own fault you're poor. I mean, this is crazy stuff. And then a couple of tweets later, they say, slippery slope if you do not value all life. Value all life.
Yes.
Now, I asked Tony the question, if that was an Indian man who had died up at the bank, would Leo Varadkar have said, oh, he was an Indian man?
Probably.
Who was also...
Yes.
Because let's face it, Leo does not like poor people. He doesn't particularly like foreigners either. He's not...
People forget. People forget. Leo Varadkar is on the Dáil record saying that if you were a foreign person and you were unemployed for between the 3 and 6 month mark, send them home. Yeah. Give them the next 3 months dole up front and send them home with it as a parachute payment to go away. Now, I'm obviously paraphrasing what he said, but that is, and funnily enough, I find that what's very, very this will be my little conspiracy theory, Martin, and it's not often I go there. I find those articles are finding themselves buried on Google now, whereas you could easily find them now. They're all seem to be taken down since he's...
where do Google have their offices?
There just seems to be an awful... luckily, if you haven't screenshot some of these things, it's very hard to find them. But he's certainly... these things are a matter of record. He said them on the Dáil record, and, as we know from the likes of Ken Fox and Newsworthy and the other accounts that take these videos and keep them, that they exist, but my God, try find them on a Google search now and they've been buried.
Well, I think that's part of the advantage of having your Ireland as the centre for, what is it, this hub. We are the centre of the world now, because the whole world was laughing at us over what happened with Francis Fitzgerald, but we are an island at the centre of the world, but we are a very isolated island here at the centre of the world.
Just back onto but keeping it towards the homelessness topic, Hazel, we're nearly a year on from Apollo House.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This week it was announced that they're going to start the long-awaited demolition, and I know you were involved.
Yes, yeah, I was in Apollo House almost a year ago when it was taken over, and everybody who left really felt that it was the end of the beginning, in terms of we left Apollo House knowing that the people who would become homeless in this year, in 2017, wouldn't be looked after. We left knowing that there are plenty of places available in terms of homes that are unoccupied. There's just a lack of will and a lack of political will to actually open homes up to people. And I've heard the argument that it's all very well to give somebody a house, but then, they're irresponsible.
It's this moral hazard.
It's a moral, how do you know that they're going to pay their electricity bill? Oh, well, how do you pay your electricity bill? By direct debit or in the post office? Well,
most people are just one paycheck away from being homeless. One paycheck. I mean, even in good jobs, could you survive 2 months not working? I mean, how many people could survive 2 months not working, or 2 months without an income? Homelessness can happen to anybody, and the fact that it is happening to, on a bigger scale, to different demographics than it has in the past, like young children are now a huge group of homeless people.
Yes.
And they like us to believe that it's men with difficulties, men with addictions.
Yes, but you also have to ask, but what is an addiction? Why do people become addicted to substances? I remember, I lived away for 12 years, and I remember coming back and being horrified at the amount of people who were out in broad daylight. Not that they shouldn't be out in broad daylight, but that they were obviously addicted. And I sat and I thought, I'm flipping addicted. I'm addicted to caffeine. Don't take my coffee away from me. Now, everybody in Ireland seems to be addicted to something, whether it's alcohol or cannabis or coffee or whatever. We all seem to have an addiction. And at its most simple and basic explanation, an addiction is a substitute for love. That we don't seem to understand how to love ourselves and how to love each other, and how to have compassion on a national scale. We don't have it. We don't have it from our ruling classes. There's no compassion for anybody inside in Leinster House. There's just greed, and that seems to have replaced the notion of compassion. And we like to think that we're a loving and compassionate nation, but we're really not. You meet individuals who are compassionate, but it's not the overriding arc of who we are as a nation.
No, I have to say that's always brought home to me when there was people this week. Richard Chambers did a report on News Talk and was tweeting about it, saying that members of the Navy have been in uniform have been accosted on the streets for rescuing migrants from the water, saying, "What are you doing bringing Muslims back to this country? You're a traitor to your country, to your race." And and it's become like we don't have. We can say we can talk about the land of 1,000 welcomes, but it's really not true.
No, it's you're welcome. When are you leaving?
Yeah.
And on that point, who was it who opened their religious buildings to homeless people during the week? It wasn't the flipping Catholic Church.
No,
it was the mosque.
Well, I don't know how. We've got to get past this ethos that Fine Gael have. We've got to. It's policy that homelessness happens. It keeps it's the bottom rung of their property ladder.
The easy line that, and again, I'm gonna disagree and say Fine Gael policy, because I just think it's an actual ideology that exists on this rigged free market, as Constantine Gurdjieff told me. He calls it the rigged free market. But there was one simple thing that I discussed with an MEP recently and said, well, look, actually, we'll say recently, I mean 2 years ago, and said, a vacant land or unproductive land tax. And Simon Coveney said, yep, I'm going to do that. And one of the other things Simon Coveney said he did and never did. What he did was he did actually did write it up, get it ready, and then say, and it's going to kick in 2020. And since then the situation is just exacerbated, where we've gone from, as we keep saying, where this nonsense of saying it's a normal level of homelessness. Of course it's not, because we can't have there is no normal to being comfortable stepping over people in the street.
No, it's like saying there's an acceptable level of child abuse in this country.
Yes.
No, zero. We need to be aiming for zero. I mean, I was saying to you earlier in the week, Tony, that I moved to Singapore in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And they have a policy there where everybody is entitled to own their own home. You're not just entitled to a roof over your head, and how it's done. And there's no reason we couldn't replicate it here with a bit of political will. That might be the bit that's lacking. And basically what they do is they have what are essentially government housing. The HDB, Housing Development Board, builds homes. They're high rise because they have a land shortage that we don't have here. We're talking the population of Ireland in a space that is the size of Cork County. Yeah. But everybody is entitled to a home, and you buy it from your local, what would be your local council, and the system is set up so that everybody has access to buying their own home, and we could do that here.
And are homes affordable for people?
Homes are affordable, and you pay for them from your. What they have a CPF fund, which is a Central Provident Fund. So every month that you're paid, an amount of money comes out of your salary and goes into a government managed account for you. So then when you're getting married or when you're over 35, which is the criteria, and you go to buy your own home, you access that money that you've already saved, and you buy your home with it.
So there's a route map.
There absolutely is. It's not like we need to invent the wheel, or it's not like there aren't countries where homelessness is not a problem. We just have to, look, I'm a junket. I'd happily spend my tax money to send some of our ministers over there to have a look at how they do it and come back here and replicate.
But there's a very simple, there's always an argument that all of the solutions to all the world's ills exist. It's just a lack of implementation.
Absolutely.
And that's where we fall down. We fall down in two parts in this country, which was more and more clear again, and made actually clear to the public for the first time because of that ridiculous carry-on. Accountability, we fall down hugely in. We don't hold people accountable. We actually are still maintaining that, even in Frances Fitzgerald's resignation statement and the Taoiseach speech about her resignation, it was purely that a good woman had to do something for the good of the country.
Well, look, this narrative is really bugging me that's coming across, it's that she is somehow the victim in all of this. There is only one victim in all of this, and his family, and that is Maurice McCabe.
Absolutely.
And to equate her being ambushed and trumped up charges.
He used the word. The Taoiseach used the word decapitate.
Yes. Now, I was very cross about that. The language that he used in that interview on RTE was. He wasn't speaking off the top of his head or off the cuff.
It's not accidental.
It's not accidental, and this is what €5 million on a PR company buys you.
Yeah.
That's very emotive language. It's very visual language. It's very strident language, and it puts you in mind of things like the French Revolution, where everybody turned on the ruling class and decapitated.
It was emotive language designed to do that purely to actually smear any genuine concerns as being sinister.
Yes.
And
it's normalization.
But the beauty of what actually did happen, and I struggle to reconcile this in my own mind, is that Micheál Martin clocked him around the head because he crawled into the Dáil and said how respectful he was of Fianna Fáil and how he understood what. Now, Fianna Fáil clearly have done a deal that they won't go after Charlie Flanagan.
Yeah, well, that's out of their hands.
No, it's not out of their hands because they have the numbers between them and Fine Gael too.
Okay. Let me just reiterate this. That's out of their hands, and I'll mention two names. Claire and Mick. Watch that space.
Oh yeah,
completely. Yes, and I think this was an interesting discussion that was had on Twitter and everywhere else during the week when we were looking at, is there going to be an election before Christmas? And the amount of people who were saying, hell's bells, please no. We hate the policy of the people who are in there. We really don't like the government that we have at the moment. But if they go, then all the work that has been done around the referendum, the referendums that and particularly the one around repealing the 8 will fall. And I had to say, I'm not entirely sure that I agree with that.
I don't agree.
I think that if Irish people actually showed up at the ballot box and voted for something else, if we voted in, I don't mean Renew now, but if we voted in the Social Democrats, for example, who have clearly said that they are in favour of repealing the Eighth Amendment, who have very clear and, there's that word, transparent policies around homelessness and education and mental health and things that flipping matter, then we could have a change very quickly.
Well, now I have to say, taking away the party political broadcast for the Social Democrats, I do agree with you in the most part that people, change will only come if people vote differently.
Absolutely. But although I did say that to somebody recently, and they said that's all very well for you up in Dublin, but not every constituency in Ireland has a choice. There are a lot of places they have Fianna Fáil or they have Fine Gael, and they don't have somebody from People Before Profit, or even Sinn Féin. Some places have a lack of,
and that is why when we talk about an election, that's really on that it like. The starter's gun has gone off on the election already. It's
you actually had a meeting, or there was a meeting very recently where you met with Minister Doherty.
That's right, yes. Regina Doherty met with Spark earlier, at the end of last week, around the issue of maintenance recovery. We are one of the few countries in the Western world that actually doesn't have a maintenance recovery unit, which basically means that and I'm going to sound sexist here, but it generally is fathers who are separated from the mothers of their children, and they have court-ordered maintenance and they refuse to pay it. And then women have to go back into court and confront their exes. And a lot of women who find themselves in that position of having to go back to court, it's a form of financial abuse. And chances are that in a lot of these cases, these women have been physically and otherwise abused by their ex-partners. And they nearly go without the money and go hungry themselves rather than have to face them. But this week, actually, Regina Doherty has said that she will ensure that policy is changed so that this never happens again. And that's a huge step forward. We're meeting with Sinn Féin next week as well to discuss the possibility of setting up a maintenance recovery unit, bearing in mind that when we were in front of the UN in July of last year, reporting on how we haven't particularly well implemented the Convention on the Eradication of Violence Against Women, they remarked that we really did need to set up a maintenance recovery unit for this reason, and also for the reason that if a man or a woman who owes maintenance to the other parent just decides not to pay it, it makes it very, very difficult to chase it, and you're waiting for a court date and you're going back into court. And the other problem is that if you have court mandated maintenance, if the other partner doesn't pay it, social welfare will still take it from your payments.
They're still deducting it from your payments.
They're still deducting it. So say you and I broke up, Martin.
Oh, no.
I know.
No, we've only just met.
And the court said, for example, the judge ordered that you had to pay me €60 maintenance for our 3 kids every week. And you decided that you weren't going to bother. You'd rather spend it on fags. The social welfare will still take that €60 from my low parental allowance. So it really is
putting the impetus on the partner to go and chase this money down.
And that can be from someone who they may actually be terrified of.
In fear of. And also the other person may move house, may leave the country. And if you don't have a valid current address for somebody, you can't serve them with court documents.
So basically women are being forced to chase the men that they're running away from.
That's exactly it, Martin. Yes,
that's crazy stuff.
But we're hoping. We're hoping that will change with well, this policy is one step in the right direction. Sinn Féin are going to push it forward as well. There,
isn't it? Like, I know, okay, progress comes dripping slow sometimes, but social progress, you can tend to get maybe party unity on an idea like this because it's just absolutely common sense and something that should be done.
Yes.
It goes back to what I said though earlier about the fact that when you say in certain constituencies there aren't a Social Democrat or a Sinn Féin or a People Before Profit, you do need a more unified. I don't know whether it's you talk about something like an umbrella, like right to change, or we talk about something like that.
Cross-party agreements is really what we're looking for on things that matter, on what we would call in the vernacular no-brainers.
Well, I've said this: it's going to be very hard to unite the left as a cohesive political group, but the left can very easily unite behind good ideas.
Yes, like they do in the Shannon, for example. You've so many because I really think that's where the hard work gets done. The heavy lifting, I think, gets done in the Shannon, where party allegiances are kind of left at the door to a large extent when there is an obvious problem that needs work on it, and I think that's definitely something that we could strive towards.
Well, I have this vision that for some reason everybody will go out, vote the left, because the left have this idea that we have this plan in place that will stop corruption. All we've got to do is implement the legislation. That's all we need to be in for the 3 or 4 months that are there. We'll implement this legislation. There we have brilliant anti-corruption board. Nobody can get away with corruption. And then walk out and say, right, your game now, lads. Play it fair.
In your utopia, Martin, I think that's kind
fairy
of
tale stuff. It's a lovely idea.
I love that idea.
I remember I was at the DM 25 thing a few months ago where Yanis said if he got given the reins of the EU, how he could actually I think it was by lunchtime, he'd knocked off the national debt of most countries, of the most sovereign debt in the EU by nearly 42%, and stopped what he called the Brexit effect. And it was actually a very interesting plan because how he put it was that basically, at the moment we have the ECB, we have the issuing quantitative easing or whatever, buying government bonds, and this pony scheme where it's a pyramid scheme where we're pumping up this. He said, well, what we could do then is we can just literally write a check to say we're going to buy those, we're going to buy that debt, we're going to sell it into the market, and we'll underwrite it. So in other words, if you're a bondholder who's going to buy it, it's safe as houses because the EU are underwriting the whole thing. So you sell it into the market and you charge whatever 1%, okay? So you're actually making money on reducing this national sovereign debt. The second thing he said he'd do was he'd look at what they do in the US, where people get their, say, whether it was social welfare or children's allowance or whatever. He wouldn't have it come from the Department of Social Welfare. He'd have it come out with Jean-Claude Juncker's signature on it or whatever it was. Whereas all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, everybody'd feel very bloody European, and they'd realise that so you get the same check in Paris as you would in Dublin.
Good idea.
And all of a sudden people would say, well, I feel more European. It's a very simple confidence trick in a way, but it just basically puts one way. So these things, as you say, there are utopian ideas, but there are actual...
Well, I don't know. I mean, are they utopian? Are they just
common sense?
So practical that our politics isn't able to encompass them.
Yeah.
These are practical things.
It's like the idea of a universal payment. I'm all for that. I think it is a great idea that everybody gets the same amount of money, almost like child benefit, that no matter how rich or how poor you are, everybody who has children gets paid child benefit. I think we should have the same approach to a weekly payment or a monthly payment, that everybody in the country gets paid the same amount, and that's yours.
It's going to happen because
well, I do hope so.
The robots are coming, and people are underestimating how different this. If you have a child starting school at 4 years of age today or 5 years of age, nobody can predict what job is going to be available for that child when they leave school. They know that 80% of the jobs that exist right now will not exist when that child leaves school.
Right, but we still need skills. And the problem with the Irish education system is that it doesn't teach skills.
Oh no,
so we need...
Richard Bruton came up with this great idea that we'll get the corporations in. They'll tell us what the children need to learn to be nice little drones and sit them in cubicles, and these drone jobs won't exist.
The Americans did that in the 1920s, by the way. They introduced, when the American Dream was the original writer of the American Dream wrote it as a social good, but the actual corporates took it over and decided that it was about aspirationism. And they actually then wrote parts into the syllabus and into church sermons on a Sunday, and basically paid for the message to go out from
Their
the pulpit
communications unit, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's fascinating in a very
brilliant,
scary way.
There's a brilliant couple of pieces on it, and it was one of the things I also brought up with Constantine Gurdjieff about the death of the American dream and how it really never was. The person who coined the phrase, it never looked anything like what he intended it to anyway. But I think we're all kind of in agreement here. There are alternatives, there are solutions.
Yes.
We just need a consensus, and I'm afraid to go back to what you said earlier, Hazel, about there maybe isn't enough of a consensus of people who actually care about one another.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is we need people in Dáil Éireann who are prepared to be a little bit uncomfortable for a while. At the moment we have people in the Dáil are majority male, majority middle class, majority privileged in terms of the types of places that they went to school, and they're landlords. So and therefore these are the kind of people that they have as friends when they go out for dinner, when they go out for a pint. They're talking. I mean, you think this is an echo chamber? Have you been to Leinster House lately? They're all speaking literally the same language. I say they're all. I don't actually mean that, because I know that there are people in there who are significant, strong voices. You mentioned Claire Daly and Mick Wallace earlier, and they're not the only ones, but there's not enough of them. We need the people of Ireland to turn around and say, do you know what? We'll actually take a chance for once. We'll elect somebody different and see what happens.
Well, it's this idea that there is a professional politician.
Oh, yes.
Okay, first of all, disavow yourself of that. There's no such thing as professor. You could pick 12 people at random and give them politicians' jobs, and they will fare no better or no worse than 12 elected representatives. There is no professionality in being a politician. There just isn't. There is experience, but then experience leads you into this structured way of thinking that ends you up with stuff like the Department of Justice, where nobody can get a straight answer to anything. We need to get past that structured thinking where we think, the guy next door can't be a politician. The guy next door is probably a better politician than anybody you have in Leinster House.
There's kind of two sides to the coin here. I'm just thinking in terms of the guy next door could possibly be a politician, and that leads us to what we've always called our parish politics. Yes. You turned up at my grandfather's funeral, therefore I will vote for you, and that sort of thing. But the other side of that is that we're in, I think, a relatively unique situation here in Ireland where our politicians are accessible. If you want to go and have a meeting with the minister, write a letter and then write another one, and then and eventually they'll kind of go, oh Jesus, all right, then your name's at the gate at Leinster House, you should come on in and I'll meet you for 20 minutes. True. Or you have your local politician who is very open to hearing from their constituents for the most part, and you can go down, and they are locally available in their clinics on whatever night of the week they do it, and you can walk in and see them. And if your local politician happens to be a minister, all the better for you.
Well, both you and I have met with the same minister in the last 2 or 3 months. That just shows you how accessible they are in this country.
I wish my local TD wasn't as accessible.
Rock the block.
The junior minister for posters.
It was his birthday recently.
Yeah, he turned 21.
Stop it. Now that's an interesting point, actually, because Simon Harris, who is of course our Minister for Health, has taken an awful lot of flack for the fact that he's only 17 and a half or whatever he is, and he's in this job. And it comes back to what you were saying as well, Martin, about experience and being a politician and needing experience, and there is an element of that as well. And I just wonder, was he kind of
well, I think it's more life experience rather than political experience.
Yeah,
there's an issue here in terms of the conveyor belt. It's there's very much is a conveyor belt of going off to America and doing a little few months with some senator or whatever, going through,
which is privilege as well. Sorry, but only rich people can do internships.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry,
but
you're right.
This is the conveyor belt, and then they come back and and then Wikipedia changes to, well, you got a county councillor, town councillor, minister, TD, minister, etc. And it really is a conveyor belt. And I feel now like I'm going to be a total ass move, but I saw when they were putting up the posters outside that Owen Murphy and Noel Rock were having a talk on Brexit and what it meant for us, and this poster was
Owen
going
Murphy
up,
and Noel Rock.
and all I could think of was going, hang on, there's nothing you guys could tell me about Brexit. In fact, it was just staggering, and I thought you've realistically, you worked as a speechwriter in the nuclear power plant or whatever it was, with a nuclear authority, and Noel, you never worked in a real no, but he never had a real job outside of politics, and he's gonna tell me about Brexit, and I just said, well, my God, this is what 87 grand a year gets you.
Well, I think too, and this argument is going a long time. If you had term limits, you would cycle these people through much faster, take the best ideas they have out of them, and then back out into the real world again. And you're constantly cycling new opinions, new viewpoints in. I mean, to me, 2 terms is absolute max anybody should ever be allowed in politics.
Funnily enough, Leo Varadkar believed that a few years ago.
Yeah, he doesn't believe it now.
He might have changed his mind.
Yeah, no, but I do. I think if you want to talk about for the good of the country is, don't have these guys sitting in there for 20... I mean, the fact that we had somebody who sat there for 40 years, that blows my mind. It blows my mind. 40 years out of real life. How can you... God, I don't know. I'd be lost.
It's a bit like joining a convent or something, isn't it?
Yeah,
in terms of leaving real life and only listening to people who support what you think broadly, and whose experiences are so similar to your own. Which is why we need Breed Smith and people like that. We need more people in our Leinster House, in the Dáil, in our Parliament, who actually have life experience and who are aware of what hardship looks like and what it feels like. And as Gary Gannon said, sorry, I'm talking about Social Democrats again.
Okay, you're allowed.
But, I am a paid up member, so perhaps I should say that for transparency's sake. But I heard him speak a couple of months ago, and he said, people who haven't been there talk about poverty and, it must be terrible not to be able to, buy a new Ferrari or whatever. But he said, they don't know what it smells like. And I thought, you're right, because people and it doesn't necessarily smell dirty. And he went on to say that his mother always made sure the sitting room was painted every Christmas. So to him, the smell of fresh paint is actually the smell of poverty.
It's an interesting,
that's the thing, that people who haven't lived in poverty, people who have no idea what homelessness feels like and how it feels like failure. I've been homeless 3 times in my life, but I had a roof over my head, so I wouldn't have been counted as homeless. Do you know what I mean? And it's that shocking feeling of failure. And failure on a personal level rather than on a political level that these people in the Dáil feel when they don't get re-elected. It's that visceral thing that poverty does to you that these people have no idea about.
Staggering when someone I'm conscious that we will move this on, but I just want to make one very quick point that in any other walk of life, if I buy a book off in Eason's and the bloody binding breaks in it, I can bring it back and get a refund. If I buy a jacket and it's waterproof and it's not, and it leaks, I go back and I can get my money back. In politics, they seem to think accountability is because they have to run for election every well.
I know you didn't want to go on about this. Accountability in this country is the number one problem. It's the number one absence. And when you have this situation that we had over the last week, the person at the top has got to go. If you don't get rid of the person at the top, how are you ever going to tackle the ones that have power in the middle?
Yes, you must cut off the head of the snake.
And now that a minister has... And it's not that a minister has been fired from her job. She simply lost that little bit of allowance that is tarnished her. She still gets paid everything she's due for sitting in the Dáil, still going to get a fabulous pension. I mean, and this is hardship. This is what they consider hardship.
12 hours later, she was she went in front of the convention for selection committee for the next election.
How? She was decapitated.
Right. We're going to have to move things on.
Boilers, Tony, and this week I've only the one, and I asked a question yesterday on Twitter. I said, I was thinking about it, and I said, could anybody have confidence that any freedom of information request to the Department of Justice in previous times has ever been fully complied with? And Ken Fox came back to me, and Ken did a great little thread on this. If you get a chance, have a look. It's there. And Ken said, I think anybody who has experience of submitting FOIs to the department would have zero faith in full compliance. Now, that's a shocking thing to say.
I have a funny FOI story.
Go.
Years ago, this is not news to anybody in this room, but I was sexually abused for pretty much my entire childhood, and I found out by accident that I actually had a social worker. Like when I was an adult, just a few years ago, and somebody just happened to mention to me in passing. She was a social worker, and she said, "Yeah, I've seen your file, and I've seen your file from when you were a child." And I went, "What? Sorry?" And she goes, "Yeah, the social." And I said, "No, I don't know." And in fairness to her, she went back to the office and sent me the file number so I could go and look for it.
Yeah.
So I FOI'd it immediately. And between the conversation we had that afternoon and the following morning, me asking for my file, it went missing.
Oh, God.
And they couldn't find it. And I was like a dog with a bone. I said, "No, I need to see this. I really, really need to see this." And I went backwards and forwards. And every month I'd politely ring up. And I was polite. I said, I'm still chasing this. I'd still love to see it. 18 months later, they found it in a filing cabinet.
Oh, God.
I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, they've been watching that Donegal catch-up in a filing cabinet. That's where it was, kind of where it should have been. Where were they looking for? Anyway, that's not the funny bit. The funny bit is that I had documents coming from a hospital. I had documents coming from the Eastern Health Board, as it was at the time, and they were redacted. There were elements of them redacted. Fair enough, that happens. But what was really funny was there was no consistency in the redaction. So if I put the two documents side by side, different bits had been redacted. So I could read the whole document.
That has so happened to me as well. Really? I swear to God. I asked twice for the same things, and they came back and they had blacked out different parts. Yeah. And I'm looking at this and going, oh my God. And I just put the two together and I was able to go, oh yeah, look at that. And then even at the top where the names were redacted, they redacted the word him all the way through, and I'm like, I figured out it was him, like the first line, and somebody sat there and redacted him the whole way through it, utterly redacted him. And I'm thinking, such a waste of time, and it was simply to be opaque. They were, I mean, I got one. I have a picture of this on my computer, and everything is redacted. It's one page, all black, except for Mr. McMahon.
Story of your life, isn't it?
Every piece of it is redacted. Ken's doing great work on it, and I think everybody needs to Ken put up a how to request
an idiot's guide.
An idiot's guide.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
And us being
idiots.
Us being idiots. Yes. It's something that I am. It's about a decade since I did an FOI request, a proper on everything they have on me, and it's long overdue. And Simon McGarr, Tuped, was talking during the week. He got FOIs back, and they literally transcribe his tweets. This is true. Oh, no. He did this huge thread on it. They transcribe his tweets, and they send them around to everybody, and then they meet and they have discussions. And then they'll discuss whatever he said. This was all about the public services card.
Yeah.
He was, I think it was Morning Ireland he was on. And it's transcripted out, sent around to all these people, and they have these discussions. Now, I know anytime I speak about the scope department within the Department of Social Welfare, that questions are asked. And I know this. And I'm wondering, have they done the same? Have they taken all my tweets? And have they transcribed them out? I'm so dying to see, is this what has happened?
Feel sorry for the person who has to read them. Did you see? There was a brilliant tweet by Oireachtas Retort though that mentioned, said that it was just I don't have it straight to hand, but the quote was just got notified that my tweets are being taken for the National Archives, are being preserved by the National Archives, and the tweets are brilliant. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And in the same afternoon, got told that I've been unsuccessful for a role as a digital editor in a company, FML. So because obviously the burden of anonymity
We got to move it on, Tony, because we're getting to the end of things, and there's only one thing left to discuss.
Your friend.
Trump is off his head. The man is insane. He's insane. Now, yesterday, he stuck up... I looked as this came up on my feed, and I said, what's this? And I clicked on it, and I'm going, holy shit, he did not just retweet. I'm going, holy shit. And his very next tweet, I put up, you're insane. And I've had to turn off the laptop since yesterday. I cannot see Twitter. I'm just getting all these messages. I get guys pointing guns, pictures. I get death threats on a daily basis from Trumpers.
He's a Trump troll in terms of... So as soon as you do that, it's like literally calling them onto you.
Oh yeah, I get added to these lists, and all these lists are, this list is sent to a militia. This is the list of libtards.
Oh yes.
And so every day I have to go back in and I have to block anybody who's put me on a list. Every day.
Oh, what fun.
Oh yeah, and they say the most outrageous things.
I just want to take issue with something that you've said there. You've said that Trump is insane. And I think that using that word does a great disservice to people with mental illness. He's not insane, he's just nasty.
He's evil.
Yes. Yeah.
He's evil.
Did you hear his speech to the Native Americans this week? Did you hear it? Because it's absolutely fantastically evil in its its delivery is hilarious, where he basically has war heroes in front of him, and he decides that here's an opportunity to have a cut at Elizabeth Warren and call her Pocahontas. And he says, not you people are great, not Pocahontas.
And it's the you people. It's the you people. My sister is Native, or my sister-in-law is Native American, and she lives in upstate New York with my brother. And he got a position offer further down south in the States, and it was once in a lifetime opportunity. And she said, we can't go. I can't go there, nor can I bring the children. You must be joking.
Oh my goodness.
And that's a Native American girl living in New York who can't move to the southern states. She said, there's no way. She said, your children wouldn't be able to go to school. She wouldn't be able to step outside the house. That's how bad it is over there. And then this idiot is putting these, whether they be real or fake, I don't know. I was shocked. I mean, this is meant to be the leader, not just a leader, the leader of the biggest country in the free world, the flag flyer for everybody. And I'm just, oh my God, you are insane. Well, evil.
Yes.
You're evil.
But for me, the best part of that was the response by the Native Americans. It was so dignified, it was so measured, it was so, we're actually not getting involved in this, we're stepping back. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it was so beautiful in the integrity, and I thought, that kind of sums them up. I mean, talking about compassion, as I started at the beginning, we all remember the story of the Choctaw Nation who sent us money in the middle of the famine.
Yes.
And we're on the Trail of Tears, marched along to die by an Irishman.
Yes. Yeah.
In the ultimate irony, we have an Indian, a Native American Choctaw. I think there's a Choctaw now who lives in Galway, who and is a very impressive speaker. He's been up in the Glasnevin Cemetery and talks about our famine, and yet we have the dishonour of knowing that when they were made to march on the Trail of Tears, that it was an Irishman who had the gun at their backs.
Well, there is, pretty much any badness that has gone in the world, there is an Irishman involved somewhere along the line. And in the States now, you just look at all the second names of these second generation guys that are, tiki torch Nazis, and you look at their names, and who are they? They're Irish, and you're like, what happened to you? What happened to you? You got abroad and suddenly went, oh, fuck everybody else.
Well, I do think there was one. There's one very dangerous. God, I'm gonna actually say something almost in defence of Donald Trump.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Yeah, this is the first time on air. It does it all the time.
Yeah. I have a red cap on at the moment, but
Make Groves great.
His Pocahontas comment about Elizabeth Warren, while it's obviously a horrible thing to be thrown around, Elizabeth Warren was lying. for years about her lineage of Native American. There is no.
But it doesn't. That doesn't make Donald any less racist.
No, but it is telling that when she was in the faculty in Harvard, that they used to wheel her out and say that we have a diverse faculty because she had signed herself up as a Native American. And then when, of course, they looked into the lineage, there was no traces in her.
I think she might have just got confused and thought that Native American meant that she was born there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Well,
benefit of the doubt.
Problematic.
Have you anything on for the Christmas?
I don't do Christmas.
Do you not?
I flippin' hate Christmas.
Oh,
If
no.
Christmas was a thing, I'd set it on fire.
Oh God.
Yes.
Oh no, we're so shocked.
Yeah, I can tell. You didn't know that about me, did you? It's not on my CV.
Like, I hate Halloween, but like, I love Christmas.
No, I can't do it. No.
Okay.
And I have children as well who've been brought up without Christmas. God love them.
Oh well, I don't do God, but I do Christmas.
we do all the atheist trappings.
So that's what Christmas is anyway, isn't
Yeah,
it?
consumerism and going drinking to excess.
Well, I have to say now, I don't drink to excess. Basically,
Well, your
Tony-
version of excess and mine now, Martin, might be slightly different.
Oh no, I can go excessive. I can, but you know, I'm better behaved than I used to be in the past. Yeah, way better.
I just want to look guys. I want to make a point on the air. Just say thanks to everybody who has been clicking on and listening. We've actually been blown away this week by how well it's gone and what it's. Look, honestly, just the feedback's been terrific, and just to see.
I am humbled. I'll say it. I am humbled. Tony doesn't know what humbled means, but I am actually humbled. Thank you very much for listening to us.
I hope I don't. I hope that my appearance doesn't result in a drop in the rating.
I don't think so. I
don't think so.
I have to say we were delighted, and we got some really, really excellent feedback knowing that you were coming in. So thanks very much for coming in, and thanks for your time.
Delighted to have been here.
Yeah,
It's great
thanks
crack.
very much for being here, Hazel.
I just want to thank everybody for listening and remind you that you can subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcast from. Please take a minute, leave us a review, and don't forget to tell your friends. You can send us an email to theechochamberpod@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @echochamberspod. Thanks again, folks.